Hey folks, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Natasha and I do book things here. So today's video is going to be my May wrap-up where I read a total of 3 books. What is this? I didn't even put up 3, I just went 3 books. I read 3 things. Also, I took my nails off and now my hands look like actual stubs. It's a sad thing. I'm going to talk about the 3 books I read in May, and I'm going to talk about why May was hard and why I only read 3 things in May. That is completely unlike me in general in my reading. Typically, I tend to read anywhere from like, I want to say 7 to 13 things, somewhere around like that 10 range. So for me to come on here and read 3 books, which I know is a lot of books for some people, but for me it's not, I'll explain sort of what happened in May. First thing in May, I discovered Stardew Valley. I think it's okay, especially being a creative person, to, I don't know, explore other creative things. I do love video games. I love things like Animal Crossing and The Sims and stuff like that, and so discovering Stardew Valley was just welcome to a time suck. Like, it is a complete and total time suck. You have a farm and it's sort of, I don't want to say it's open world, but like you have like this little world and you can talk to people and it's innocent and it's pure and you can farm, and oh boy, like you start playing Stardew Valley and next thing you know you're like, oh, I've played this game for 16 hours straight, and all I want to do tomorrow is play for another 16 hours. One of those games where you can just get sucked into playing it infinitely. So that's kind of how I started my month, was just playing a fuck ton of Stardew Valley. Like, I think total right now, in the entire month of May, I haven't really played in June, but for the entire month of May, I played something like 107 hours or some shit. Like, it's just ridiculous. So that's where the bulk of my time sort of happened, and I lost a lot of reading time doing that. There was a couple things, like I did listen to an audiobook while playing it, which is one of the only reasons why I got this book done. One of the books that I read this month, this video is gonna stray from my typical wrap-up because I'm sort of talking about my life. This is sort of a different wrap-up. This is like an easy breezy wrap-up as opposed to the ones where I'm trying to like quickly talk about 13 books. Anyway, so the first book I ended up reading for the month and really quite liking was An Absolutely Remarkable Thing by Hank Green. So this is a debut novel by Hank Green, and I am a pretty big fan of the Hank brothers, no. I'm a pretty big fan of the Green brothers, having watched John and Hank's videos from the Blog Brothers back in like the creation of my YouTube channel. I stumbled across them very early on when I think they had like, oh, I want to say less than 50,000 subscribers. I was like, I want to say like OG with that, but like definitely was watching them from their like baby videos. Through that, discovered that John wrote a book at the time and read it and have continued to read every one of his releases. So once I heard that Hank was releasing a book, it was just like, yeah, I need that. Where this woman discovers a robot like sculpture thing and she ends up being the person who makes first contact with another sort of like species, I suppose, or alien kind of thing. It's been a hot minute since I've read these books too, seeing as I'm filming this video on the 25th of June. So I'm almost like 2 months out from reading this. But she makes first contact and it has to do with the influence of media and being that person that the entire world is looking at under a microscope as to like what she's doing wrong, and just what all that means. It's very, very intriguing. The sci-fi aspects of this I love because it's not a book where there's a lot of space involved and there's not necessarily a lot of science. That's my favorite kind of sci-fi. I don't necessarily like space wars, I don't really like heavy sci-fi, like heavy science based, and I don't necessarily like a whole lot of space. I do like space sci-fi, but this is something different. I just sort of realized I really like sort of slightly futuristic robotics. Is that a genre? I don't even know, I'm just talking out of my ass now, but like, very similar to Sourdough in that it's just like our world, but just slightly futuristic. And that's kind of what this is. It's like our world, but then a little bit of a robot. Alien species. You know, whisper of alien species. Yeah, so I really quite like this. In terms of how it like wraps up, it wasn't my favorite ending in the world. It kind of lost me towards the ending when it starts to get a little more full of action. And so overall I ended up giving it a 4.5. Do I think that you guys should read this? Absolutely. I thought it was really, really enjoyable, especially if you are somebody who has some sort of following on social media. Then you'll come to realize like sort of some of the feelings that the main character has in this book. Quite like that. So yeah, that was the first thing that I read in May. Gave it a 4.5. Again, not a perfect 5 because it did sort of lose me a little bit at the end, but still a really solid book and I quite liked it. Moving on in my current life in May, some shit went down. Yeah, so I'm going to talk about it because I'm a little bit removed from it now, like about a month past, and I can talk about it. At the time in May, my father-in-law was going through chemo treatments, and it was sort of leading into his last month of chemo, and so we were all sort of really excited about like it being his last month. He's okay, by the way, so like before you guys freak out or anything, it's not like a super severe chemo that he's on or cancer that he has, so everything's looking real good. Moving into his final treatment before we're kind of like let that chill and relax, the man has a heart attack. So I'm like, well, great, thanks life. So naturally my life is just at a standstill when it comes to taking care of my husband, taking care of his dad, and making sure that like all my ducks are in a row, and managing my own stress and anxiety around that, around work, around Jeff, around everything, you know? So it kind of just went, I'm too stressed to read, period. And when I get like sort of overwhelmed with stress of that nature, everything else falls. Like there's basic self-preservation, like, oh, I need to shower today, like that was my only priority, right? So, or like I need to go to work and then immediately be unconscious. Like there was no time for reading, there was no thought. Again, I delved like into a new hobby when I could that was just sort of mindless, which was more Stardew Valley. There was a lot of just a lot of crying and a lot of like just being upset and not really knowing what's going on, and also at that time planning for New York, which was like getting our plane tickets, packing, making sure I had time off work, making sure that like Jeff's dad was going to be okay so that we could even leave. That was kind of my May. It's understandable why reading was not a top priority. I find when my life is just a lot, either I have to live in it or I have to completely not. And in that moment I had to live in it, so I didn't really have a choice to find an escape, which is often what I use reading for. Like, I don't want to say necessarily it's always an escape, but it's nice to sort of go into a different world. But when things in your own world, at least for me, when my own world is chaos, I can't even take that second to go, I'm gonna read about a happy world, I'm gonna read about a sad world. It was just like, I need to live in my moment. And that's what I did. Around that time though, I was again listening to a lot of audiobooks. I listened to all 3 of these on audiobook? I think I did. I think I listened to all 3 and also read along with the book, like the physical book, which is often how I get out of slumps, is to have an audiobook and the physical book. It like forces me to read because my brain is just too much going on, so I have to like have something to listen to and physically have the book. Because if I have something to just listen to, I'm not listening to it. Like I'm just like la la la, like words in my head, but like I'm falling asleep. Or if I have the physical book, then I get distracted. That's my advice for you if you're ever in like a slump. If you can find the audiobook and listen with the physical book and actually like page turn along with it, it helps. Next book that I read in May was one for my 5-star prediction, and that was I Was Born for This by Alice Oseman. And I don't know why I predicted this to be a 5-star read for me. I think I did it sort of riding the train of Radio Silence, which I really, really liked, and expecting that I was gonna like Alice Oseman's future books or anything she's ever written. That wasn't really the case for this, just the subject matter. I love the characters, and there is diverse characters in this, which I think is always awesome. But this was heavy in sort of like boy band culture and like fan culture and stuff like that, which is just not my scene. I know a lot of people, like Chelsea loves that kind of stuff and loves sort of boy band books, but like it's not something I personally am interested in or that interested in reading. I can dabble in a little bit of like celebrity culture here and there, but this didn't click for me. I'm coming to realize that books all about fandoms is just simply not my thing. They definitely hold importance in other people's lives who are big fandom fans. This just didn't really work for me. It just feels creepy. At least for me, it's just, I don't know, like that sort of accidental meeting your like #1 sort of idol is kind of weird, because realistically it's not gonna happen. I know it's nice to read about it in a book, but for me, I like a little bit of like, I don't know, it just feels weird. It's just, in every book I've read about it, it never happens in a way that I'm like, oh, that feels natural. It's just, anyway, whatever. That's just my own issue with boy band or fandom books. I would love to just read a book about a fandom where they don't meet their idol. Or it's not that thing where it's like you meet their idol and it's not what they expected. I don't like that trope either. I don't like them when they meet them. I don't like them when they meet them, and I could ramble about this forever. Anyway, one thing I did really like about this book is that there is a character in here that deals with anxiety and panic attacks, and I felt like it was a really accurate representation of that. At least in the panic attacks that I personally have had, I feel like that was well represented in this. So I did like that, and I did like some of the characters, but again, just sort of lost me a little bit in the general plot of the book. So I ended up giving this a 3.5, so I would say like a little bit above average. Still a good book, just not for me, and that's okay. So then as May sort of progressed, and obviously I sort of knew that I was heading to New York and all that stuff, I kind of panicked and went, oh my god, I need to read all these books by authors I could meet at BEA and BookCon. And so I had every intention of reading all the rest of the Joe Hill books that I had, along with just other authors' stuff, and like, I don't know, I had like 20 books I wanted to read before, and it just, like I said, May was a shit show, so I just couldn't do it. I did, however, read one book by an author I did have a signing for. However, I didn't end up making it to his signing because there was another panel. You know, that's another struggle of like BEA and BookCon. You often have similar timelines overlapping, and you kind of have to go, what do I prioritize? Anyway, but I did see him from a distance, and I went, oh, that's Blake Crouch. Cool. And I saw him while I was in a different line, and I couldn't really leave that line, but I just went, in my mind, I'm like, that's Blake Crouch. Hi, Blake. And then, you know, he didn't see me, but that's fine. Book though that I read and really liked, this was my 5-star read of the month. I finished it like 2 days before I went to BEA. That is Dark Matter, and whew, this is a wild ride. Yeah, I don't know how to describe this without it being too spoilery. How the fuck do I describe this? This is a adult psychological thrillery sci-fi kind of thing, and I'm, again, a book that I have not read anything quite like this, but I need more books like this. I'm really excited to read his new one, Recursion, just based on the writing of this alone. I think the man has some really brilliant ideas, and I'm pumped for it. So this basically follows a guy who, it starts off with just sort of a narrative of his evening, and then all of a sudden he wakes up just surrounded by scientists, and they're like, oh my god, you're back. And he's like, back from fucking where? More or less, as you go into this novel, you realize that through the sciencey stuff that happens in this, he has multiple options for his life. Does that make sense? And you come to figure out what that means. Like, is his wife his wife? Is his child his child? That's all I'm gonna go into without it sort of getting more into spoilers, but there is a little bit of I don't want to say like Groundhog Day scenario necessarily, which I really like in books, where it's like I'm living the same life over and over again. There's a little bit of that, but it goes a different journey, and a little bit more like thriller-ish and like psychological fucked upness. Anyway, I freaking love this. I need more books like this. Yep, gave this one 5 stars and absolutely loved it. So that was yeah, all the books that I read in May. Very short month, and yeah, just following up to sort of wrap up, I'm okay. I went to New York a little high-strung, full of a lot of anxiety and stress. Not gonna lie, had a great time in New York, but definitely came back from New York, and then I think honestly decompressed all of May and 6 days in New York all at once. And so that's why it's taken me a hot minute to get back into videos and back into filming, because I've just been decompressing for what feels like almost another month. 3 weeks at least, just sort of getting back into a routine of my life. And that's okay. I just want to kind of put that out, that like, that's fine. If you need to do that, that's fine. I love making videos and I love doing it, but I'm not going to be doing it when I don't feel like it, and that's important. Don't force yourself to do this. If you're a booktuber who's watching this, or a content creator of any sort, if you need to take those moments to just unplug and heal yourself outside of social media and your hobby, do that. You need to do that. And I needed to do that in May. And I found a different hobby, and I did that for a bit, and that's fine. I still read some books, one of them being one of my favorite books I've read this year, and yeah, that's what I did. Oh yeah, I guess if you guys want another update, I completely threw the star jars out the window for both May and June. That's fine. Might come back and do some more in July. But again, like, just a message to everybody, just be gentle with yourself. If you got some shit going on in your life, just be gentle with yourself and be kind, and know that you can't do it all. So somehow I talked about 3 books and still made it a 20-minute video, so I'm doing much better now, so thank you. Also, my father-in-law is doing great right now, so that's good. Before any comments down below worrying about his health, he's doing great. I'm doing okay. Jeff's doing okay. We're all doing okay. Things are okay. It's fine. This is fine. So yeah, hope everyone's doing good, and until my next one, I will talk to all you soon. Bye!